Inside the Birds is back. What's up, everybody? Geoff Mosher, Adam Caplan here for another Inside the Birds, and we got a lot to talk about. We'll answer some questions. We'll get into some Eagles topics, of course, as we do some NFL stuff. It's going to be a good time, as it is. I've been joking with Adam because last year at this time there was so much going on with Carson Wentz and the new coaching staff that we didn't have to really collaborate and write scripts and think about what we were going to talk about like we're doing now. But it's amazing how much mileage that gave, content creators and journalists, and how, because if you remember, Adam, it was like a 5 or 6 day stretch where it looked like it was going to happen, and then it, for whatever reason, it didn't.
Oh, yeah.
And then that 5 days, I know for the fans, felt like an eternity. People started emailing, "What are you saying? It's close. It's imminent." And then all of a sudden, bam, it happens, and everybody settles down at that point.
So I was looking at The Athletic. They, because you and I are talking about what we were talking about last year at this time. Mm-hmm. Well, now they're talking about, I saw this article, 10 reasons why Carson Wentz should not be the Colts quarterback. I mean, it's
unbelievable.
There's a story when I worked at ESPN on the NFL Insider Show. There was a running joke in June. We would make up stuff, but June was like where you would come up with topics where nothing would write itself because there's nothing going on. Now with the Eagles, the big thing, and this will be the topic of today's show, I'm really looking forward to this, because we've seen this. It's being debated on Sirius NFL Radio and in social media. Is there one way to build a football team? Is there a way to do it like the Rams did? But it's not quite. I think people sort of overrated the future draft picks that they traded. It wasn't for all players. It was actually to move out of the first round one time and get picks. Mm-hmm. We'll go over all that. But that's the question now in the National Football League. But still, the Rams did trade a lot of future firsts. They don't have one until 2024. That's the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the way to go? And we'll go back. Also, I want to go back to team building about how certain teams have done it, because I was brought up, and so were you, is that you should always build through the draft and not through free agency, where that 2017 Eagle team, it'll surprise you how that team was built. It's not quite the way that most of us probably thought.
Right. Even that Bengals team that just lost in the Super Bowl wound up probably making more additions through free agency than you would normally see. Many of them that did work out. We'll get into that, because I think that's a great question as we look for the Eagles into the offseason here. Is there more than one way to skin a cat as far as building a team? And I believe that there is, and I think you do too. So we'll talk about that. We've had some great stuff lately on the Inside the Birds platforms, starting with the Trey Thomas video breakdowns. The latest one is up on the YouTube. It's only available on our YouTube channel. It's too visual. Can't put this on podcast because Trey does an unbelievable job of using the grease board drawings to explain concepts through X's and O's, and then playing the all 22 footage to watch it play out sort of in a real-time manner there. He did it on the Eagles running game, Adam, which was clearly their bread and butter last year. And he talked specifically about how inside zone became the staple of their running game, with the guards in the center, the combo blocks that they would be able to put on. I mean, obviously, Landon Dickerson really came into his own after a little rocky start for a rookie, but he really, as a run blocker, came into his own. Kelsey, of course, is Kelsey. And even with the rotations at right guard, they never really lost a beat, whether it was Driscoll or Nate Herbig filling in for Brandon Brooks there. And obviously, offensive line, big strong point. We talked about it in the last episode, the idea that maybe teams will call them to see if they're willing to give up any depth, be it Andre Dillard or Herbig or anybody else, and we'll see what develops. But Trey does such an excellent job of hitting on a number of topics within a topic, right? So it's about the running game. It's about how the inside zone became their bread and butter, but you also saw some examples of outside zone, some mid zone, which is outside zone, but with a cutback that makes it not outside the tackle, but not necessarily inside zone either, calling mid zone. And you got a chance to see Jalen Hurts working the quarterback read option off of the zone runs. And then also the running backs. There were a couple of times where he noted the running backs not necessarily putting their foot in the ground and planting on that cut. Sometimes it was Miles, sometimes it was Boston Scott, sometimes it was Kenny Gainwell. So that I thought was really interesting, because Miles kind of gets knocked all the time for, dancing too much. And if you look, I mean, I think it's, you'll see Trey show that just certain the way blocks develop, sometimes running backs get itchy, and it's not just Miles, it's all of them. They see certain holes that are there for the moment, and they don't see the better ones develop. But all in all, it was a really good breakdown on the running game. And I think that the big question will be, is this running game going to be the bread and butter for the Eagles going forward, or are they going to kind of recreate their offensive concepts based on any offseason moves that they make? The next video Trey's going to do next week is going to be really cool because he's going to flip sides and focus on the defensive line. Specifically, he's going to look to find the answer of why this defensive line did not produce that many sacks, whereas the year before they were, I think, 1 or 2 in the league in sacks, and it's basically the same D line. We know Brandon Graham got hurt, but he's gonna kind of keep an eye. He's gonna go through a lot of third downs. He's gonna talk about some of the alignment and how it's different from Jim Schwartz's scheme to Jonathan Gannon's scheme, and of course, obviously, we'll get some Fletcher Cox evaluation on the defensive ends in too. But I'm glad. This is why we bring Trey on, to educate, but not just focus only on one concept or one player, but a whole idea. And he's able to go to the other side and present some defensive concepts to us.
Marvelous stuff. Yeah, it's such an education. As you said, it's so visual. You just couldn't do it on podcast form because you can't see it. So yeah, right. It's got to be on YouTube. So make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, and that we put everything up there pretty much. So. Definitely want to do it there. And then, and then we got the Cosell stuff starts next week, right?
Yes. The Intel with Greg Cosell will start next week. It'll drop Wednesday, 6 a.m. That'll be initially on podcast only. We're going to start that off on the podcast platform. So I think that they will eventually be available on the YouTube platform, but we're really putting that out for podcast first so you can listen to it. That's not as visual. That's Greg and his breakdowns. Yeah. And the first position, what we're doing is the first few episodes are going to focus on free agency as we get closer to it, which is only a few weeks away. So we're going to have Greg evaluate free agents at many of the positions that would, be of interest for Eagles fans. So the first one I believe we said was wide receivers and cornerbacks, which are obviously, big area, not only for the Eagles, but a lot of NFL teams.
Yeah.
So we're going to throw a bunch of names at him of guys that you and I think not only will be free agents. If there's a guy that we think is going to re-sign and no doubt about it, then it's not worth it. We won't talk about it. But we're going to really put guys that we expect to be out on the market between those positions and have Greg evaluate them. Not only evaluate them individually, but how they would fit in what we've seen the Eagles do offensively and defensively over the last year with this new staff. And then the week after, we'll do linebackers and safeties. And then the week after that, pass rushers. And then the fourth of the 10 shows will be kind of by that point, it'll be the first week of free agency. And we'll have him kind of recap any moves that the Eagles make at him and how they, pertain to the team and what his expectations are. And then right after that, we'll go into his NFL draft prospect breakdown. So we're going to get a lot of Greg Cosell over the next 10 weeks.
And just understand, Greg will tell you what the tape looks like. It's up to the coaches to get the guy right, to fit in. Mm-hmm. Free agency is not a cure-all for your roster. It's just not. You remember, you're bringing someone else's players in. You're bringing players in from another team. They have to acquiesce to your culture. It doesn't always work. At 17, it worked. It's like everything they did worked. In free agency, it doesn't usually work like that. There have been plenty of misses, not just the Eagles, and many teams have missed. Bill Roseman, the Eagles GM, he's pretty much excelled. If you go back when he had personnel control, it's not always clear when he had it, but if you really find out when he had control, he's done very well in free agency. And we know in the draft, we actually got a question about him in our AskITB segment, which will end the show. But roster building is so interesting. Because as you know, man, covering this league, not every team looks at it the same way. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. If you look at the Eagles' free agency, as we talk, get ready for that. Since Howie came back from whatever you want to call that 1 year off of banishment with Chip Kelly there, he has had a different philosophy on free agents. There's no doubt about it. Shorter deals for the most part. And I would say most of his signings, in retrospect, you forget, but they were not big name signings. You know, Brandon Brooks has been a tremendous player for the Eagles, but he was not a big name when the Eagles signed him. Neither was Malcolm Jenkins. Yeah, people knew who he was. He was a first-round pick, but he wasn't one of the top safeties on the market that year. Jarius Byrd was considered the hot name.
Yeah,
There was
everyone wanted
another TJ Ward. There were like guys out there who were getting more buzz than Malcolm Jenkins was at the time. You know,
I would say the McLeod Malcolm was a bigger name, but he wasn't seen as like his role with the Eagles would evolve over time. It wasn't kind of what they signed him to be.
Right.
Became more of a box safety, closer to the line, and with playing that star position.
Yeah, he didn't sign a blockbuster deal when they got him for that first 4-year deal. It's not like he, reset the market for safeties or anything like that.
Yeah, right. But it's a pretty good deal. But so was Rodney McLeod's at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But they always have a plan of generally not overpaying. It's not, they don't do it all the time where they get it right with what they should pay and paying what the market should bear. But it's just interesting how, you talk to general managers, they don't all see it the same. And the Rams just won the Super Bowl. It's funny, they have more of their own talent on the roster than you think. Like if you go through, particularly their starters, it's people are acting like they only, of the 22 starters, are only like 5 guys that were their own. That's not even close to right. Actually, they had more starters that they either signed as undrafted free agents or drafted on their own than the Eagles did in 2017 for the Super Bowl team. That tells you that it's not quite what everyone says about them giving away their first-round picks. A lot of the talent on the team is guys that they drafted.
Sure. And by the way, yeah, you're right. That 2017 Super Bowl team was chock full of that mid-level free, the Chris Longs, the Nigel Bradhams, the Patrick Robinsons, the Garrett Blunt. They wound up. Did they sign a corner? I know they traded for Ronald Darby, but I'm trying to think.
Yes.
If they signed a corner.
All right, so we might as well get into that. So when you look at it, Corey Graham, old reliable.
Right, Corey Graham.
The Tim Houck of his time, if you remember. Tim Houck, I know that I believe he's going to go to the Jaguars as a D-backs coach. It should happen, but if it doesn't, it's maybe Tim decided not to come back. But I had heard that Peterson wanted to hire him, so we'll see what happens. But when you look at their 22 starters, this surprised me. Only 11 were signed. They were their own guys. Big V at left tackle. Kelsey's 2. Lane Johnson's 3. Ertz is 4. Aguilar's 5. Foles is 6. That counts. He was still drafted by the Eagles, although he left and came back. So 6 on offense. Defense, Curry is 7. Cox is 8. Graham is 9. Kendricks is 10. Mills is 11. And then that's it. Bradham, as you mentioned. Darby trade, Corey Graham signing, McLeod signing, Jenkins signing. Jernigan signing. Right, or did they trade for him? So they traded for him. But
they traded for Jernigan.
Right, right. So Darby and Jernigan were trades. So Curry, Cox, Graham is 3, Kendricks is 4, Mills is 5. That's it. So 11, only half of their starters. Now, again, I understand other players were hurt, so didn't play. But Peters obviously was not drafted by them. They traded for him. They got him in 2009 for the Bills. So only half of their starters. It showed you can win a Super Bowl by mixing it up. But I'd have to go back and research this. I don't remember a team that had only 5 or 6 starters of their own, and the rest were free agents or traded for acquired for the free agency. That's hard to do.
Yeah, no, it's very, very difficult to do. And then most of those free agents we just talked about were 1 or 2 year deals, very moderate deals, which is how you should approach free agency, in my belief. I mean, it's okay to sign a couple of blockbuster guys if they fit with what you do, but you also can get in trouble very easily with that, as we've seen the Eagles do in the past. Guys you just sign because they're considered the best at what they do. You get into them long term, too much money, and then they either get hurt or they don't fit your scheme, or you fire your coach next year and then you don't have the right scheme for that. It's tough. That's why it's best to build through the draft and then just kind of supplement your immediate holes with short-term free agent signings.
So on that, Graham was a 1-year deal. Darby was a trade, so he was on his rookie deal. McLeod was on a long-term deal. Jenkins was on a long-term deal. Bradham had to be multiple years, right? I'm sure he was.
It was a short no, because they wound up
The 2 years?
re-signing him again into I think it was just a 2-year deal. Yeah,
Okay.
when they originally signed him.
Torrey Smith, Torrey Smith was a short-term deal. Blunt was a short-term deal.
Yep.
Foles, how did they get him?
Yeah, see, you said Foles is a homegrown guy. I think that you have to actually
Technically,
consider him a free agent. I know they
but he was
drafted him,
drafted
but he
though.
had
But
been
I'm thinking he
gone
was
for
drafted.
several years. I mean, two in St. Louis, two more in Kansas City. They got him through free agency. If you remember,
One for Kansas City. One
once
Kansas
they one
City.
one I thought it was okay, one for Kansas City.
Yeah.
They had Chase Daniel, and as soon as they got Nick Foles, as soon as they knew they could get Nick, they released Chase Daniel to get Nick Foles. So that's how that worked out. It saved them some money a lot of money in the long term there. But yeah, I would kind of classify that as free. But since Carson won the first 12 games of that year, you can talk homegrown from that regard as well. All right, Q&A. They're on a break, just to give the people let know, but you can still hear them. Quentin Michael just did our Football at 4 interview on Tuesday with Mike Gill, 97.3 ESPN. It's up on our YouTube channel. And then next week, Jason Avant will be on with Mike for our Football 4 segment, and that'll also be up on our YouTube. Now, Quentin was proud. I forgot about this. Q played for the Rams. He played for the other Rams. He played for the St. Louis Rams. So he had a little bit of Ram pride in him, for the Super Bowl. He's happy. He's seen his two former teams now win the Super Bowl in a 5-year span, right? So good for Quentin Michael on that. But he had some interesting observations on what it took for the Rams to get there and what it's going to take for the Eagles to get back to the Super Bowl. And pretty soon, Adam, we're working on something with Andrew DeCecco. He's going to be doing interview shows with draft prospects. We've got a couple specifically from small schools, because we really want to highlight in this draft process some of the better players from the small schools that we expect to get drafted and kind of make a name for themselves. And we've seen the Eagles jump all over those kind of guys, from Milton Williams to Teron Jackson to Patrick Johnson, right? Those guys who come from Patrick Johnson went to where? Tulane, right? Yeah, that's that's considered one of the smaller schools. So that series will start probably in a couple of weeks, and that's going to be a really fun one as well.
The Milton Williams pick. Now, again, it's only 1 year, and you don't want to put him in the Hall of Fame just yet, but he is so much farther ahead than where people thought he would be. It's just we'll see what happens year two. He'll build on it, and everything we've heard, he's got a very good work ethic, great energy for the job, and was a great story for them, because they really didn't know how much he'd play, because he was a third-round pick, and they had decent depth at D tackle. Or at least they thought they did.
Right.
Tui Pelotu didn't really play. The 6th rounder out of USC, who they like, and we'll see if he got to make the team next year. We've got to see what happens with Fletcher Cox and whether he's traded or not. Look, that's a position where they're going to probably have to draft. I would think fairly early, and then this is a question we had received from AskITB, which we could address just now, just in general. I'm fascinated to see what happens here with John Gannon coming back. I know we talked about this on the last pod of what kind of any schematic changes, because he didn't do everything we thought he would do. He did some of it, but it played into what Trey's going to talk about in his film piece next week. I was just flabbergasted at the lack of pass rush. I know part of it's because he was passive, because the tape showed that. But is he going to be more aggressive? What do we see for the second act for Jonathan Gannon? It's got to be better. There were growing pains. There were some weeks. I mean, look, there were some weeks they did great. Didn't give up a lot of points. Somewhat bend it, don't break. But how's it going to be better this year going forward is what I'm curious about.
Right. I'm going to maintain, and without any knowledge or looking into it yet, but just knowing the Eagles the way we do, I'm going to maintain that they're going to go about their process pretty similarly than they always have. Maybe a minor adjustment, like could they sign a veteran lineman who's a real kind of space eater to help out against the run, because they really struggled at times against the run? Yes, but from their draft and young player procurement standpoint, do I think that they're going to target a first-round linebacker so that Jonathan Gannon can have his version of Anthony Barr? No, I don't believe that they are going to do that. I don't think they're going to extra prioritize it for that reason. Are they going to, take a safety? Are they going to trade up into the top 10 to get the safety kid from Notre Dame so that they can get their Hamilton. So they can get their version of Harrison Smith. No, I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to be very analytically driven the way they have. They're going to look for guys who are really good players, smart players, fit their past criteria for what they look at each position. Now, they may get bigger, taller corners for Gannon, but they were kind of doing that under Schwartz anyway with what's his face when they drafted him. You just mentioned him. He was on the Super Bowl team, went to the Patriots. Jalen Mills, tall, physical corner. They've been doing that for a little while now anyway, but I don't think you're going to see some kind of drastic reinventing of the wheel in the Eagles player procurement area because of Jonathan Gannon's presence there. I'm sure he'll have input, but he'll have to make it work with what they give him. And I'm sure he's of that understanding anyway.
I would say this, though, on that. This is coming from other teams. When they look at the Eagles' defensive roster, they shake their head. They just don't think there's a lot of talent there. Obviously, linebacker's a problem.
Yeah.
Steven Nelson's contract's up. Slay's a stud, no doubt about it. Safety's a problem. Linebacker's a problem. DN's a problem. They just don't have enough depth, and they need talent upgrades. They got a lot. I would argue they've got a lot more work to do on defense than they do on offense. Some might not see it that way, but I agree with you. Yeah, just on the talent level, man, they got it. They need some upgrades.
Yeah, no, I definitely expect them to address that and really remake this defense. I just mean not changing their criteria for what they look for in certain players. Right.
Sure.
Let me ask you this, because I've been thinking about it the last few days. This is from what we know now, and things might change, but it looks like it's going to be a fairly good draft for pass rushers, different type, edge rushers, interior rushers, outside linebacker type rushers. Would you put it past the Eagles to take an edge rusher or a pass rusher at both 15 and 16? Do you think that's problematic to take two pass rushers back to back?
Not if that's what their grade says. It's way too early to have any idea where these guys are going to go because we haven't even got the combine yet.
Right.
But you could bring up a couple guys and say, okay, these guys should go in the first round, but we don't have any idea how high and what their grade would be. But just your question, I'll take it at face value.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you really look at it, right, if you stick by your board, let's say by chance they stay where they're at there at 15, 16, and 19. I highly doubt that, but let's just say we'll take it as they do.
Mm-hmm.
Barnett's up. I'd be very surprised if he comes back. Just my opinion. It's not known fact. The only guy that they know who's going to be a player for them is Josh Sweat. That's the only one they know.
Agree.
Teron Jackson is a fourth or fifth end. That's what he is.
Yep.
He did flash a little bit, but he hasn't shown that he could be any more than a 15 snap a game guy yet. He doesn't even factor in. It's just who are the guys you could depend on? One guy, Josh Sweat, absolutely would have no problem with it. If the grade dictates it, yes, because that you mentioned it earlier, that Super Bowl team with Chris Long, that rotation they had at the end, you want to keep rotating guys in, man, and keeping guys fresh, and you can't have enough pass rushers.
Yeah, with Curry and Graham and Long and Barnett coming on as a rookie. Yeah, that was a very deep defensive line. And then next year they went and got Michael Bennett and added him to the mix. So yeah, absolutely. I agree with you on best player available. If they happen to be defensive ends back to back, I'm with it. I have no problem with that, as long as that's where you had him on your board, as you said. All right, Adam, we've been telling people about our friends at Devicor, our new partners. So we're really excited to welcome aboard to ITB. And we've all seen over the last year what we've known as the Great Resignation. And it's made it clear there's no better time to change careers than the present. Devicor is a Philly area family-owned career development company that helps guide hardworking professionals on the path to new and fulfilling careers. Unlike the big companies in the career development space that offer the same cookie-cutter career advice and services, Devicor's certified career development team is hands-on, passionate, knowledgeable, and they take pride in working closely with their clients to ensure that their experience is personalized and tailored to their needs. So whether you're in need of a new resume, a cover letter, a CV, or you want to optimize your LinkedIn profile, or just work with a career coach, Devicor has you covered in all spaces. Go to devicor.com/birds, schedule a free 15-minute career coaching consultation, and to receive an exclusive 15% discount off your next order. Can't tell you how important it is, man. If you can get free 15 minutes of free career advice and coaching and tutelage is invaluable. I'd never had that coming out of college. I wish I did. I mean, I've done all right for myself, but it would have been nice just to, like, my LinkedIn page, by the way, stinks. I barely have time to, I think it still says that I work for FanRag Sports or something like that.
I remember when you were ready for them, like fan rag. What is that? Is it like a rag? You just shake it like this?
All of us who work for FanRag enjoyed it there, but the one thing we
Yeah.
cringed at was the name. It just was not a great name, but they were
Yeah.
on their way to doing some good things. But
Okay.
yeah, Devacor is great. We're glad to have them aboard with Inside the Birds, and it's cool that they're Philly area. We really like promoting Philadelphia area businesses, so definitely check them out. It's now is the best time with the changing landscape of industries and workforce that you get some good advice on what to do and how to update your profile and best market yourself. That's really vital.
So on that, like if you're going back to join the workforce, if you have to update your resume, they could help you do that. Cover letter, which is important. Career coaching, and then the big thing is what you just talked about. I think we all need this. LinkedIn profile optimization is super important.
Yep.
I'm still trying to figure out LinkedIn. I've got some out of it, but I need to get more out of it, and how to use it correctly. I'm very curious. So definitely check them out at devacor.com. What's the
/birds.
/birds? Okay, /birds. There you go. devacor.com/birds. Cool.
All right. Well, we appreciate them jumping aboard with Inside the Birds. Let's get into our big topic, and it's something that we were kind of talking about with the Rams. The Rams have traded they're kind of infamous now for trading a lot of first-round picks for talent, proven talent. Jalen Ramsey being one, Von Miller being another, and of course Matthew Stafford being another one. Also, the Eagles have 3 first-round picks, and we've talked a lot. We're going to put the quarterback thing aside. Let's put quarterbacks aside. Let's just say they're going forward. Jalen Hurts. That's what they've said. Let's assume for now that's the case, and they're using these 3 first-round picks to help, and then the rest to help rebuild the rest of the franchise. Do you think it's smarter that the Eagles make 3 first-round picks, or should they be crafty like the Rams? And if they have an opportunity to trade a pick for a proven talent, I don't know who that'd be right now. I mean, we'd have to go through and say, is there a pass rusher? Is there a corner? Those are really the 2, right? I mean, they've got enough in-house offensive linemen that they're good there. But a pass rusher or a cornerback, if we're not talking QB here, that is on the market that would be worth giving up a first-round pick for. And then there's always that, should they really seek to trade one of those first-round picks for a future first-round pick? And I think the big X factor in the conversation, Adam, is, and I've been working on a little bit of a research project. I'm going to write something up for InsideTheBirds.com soon, is what is the history that teams who have had multiple first-round picks have of hitting on those picks or having it be successful. And I've been going through teams that have had a lot of first round picks over the last 5 or 10 years. And it's not a great, like, the problem is you don't know if it's because the teams did not have good leadership. Like a different team would have done better with the 3 first round picks. But if you just look at some of the teams like the Browns, the Raiders, the Giants a couple of years ago, we talked to Rick Spielman about 3 weeks ago when he was with the Vikings. He had 3 first-round picks in 2013. But if you go look at it, it's not a great history. Like, you don't see an example of a team where that, and those that I looked at, where they got these 3 first-round picks, and man, did they really fix their team. In fact, there were a lot of really bad misses among at least 1 and sometimes 2 of those picks. So there's some risk here in just making 3 first-round picks, especially, Adam, when none of those picks are in the top 10.
Right, because they have 15, 16, and 19 currently. So it just goes about, and what we've talked about on our show is teams will tell you, yeah, there might be 32 picks in the first round, but there are only between 12 and 15 true first-round picks. Like,
right.
Picks 17 through 32 really should be not taken in the first round, but you have to pick them if you have it. Someone's got to make the picks there. So that they're in that spot where these guys are really not quite what you would think as a first round pick. Right after, like, around 15 is where that breakoff is. So It's interesting because I think sometimes teams like the Rams, they see where they're picking, and then remember now the Eagles were in it for Jalen Ramsey. They were one of the finalists to get him in was it 2020? Was it
Yes.
20? Yeah, it was 2 years ago. And you obviously could say it's worked for the Rams. It's not for everybody. It's teams treat. It's not like NBA for first round picks unless you're in the lottery. Really, it's like the top 8. You might as well trade the picks because it's really all about very high up in the NBA because you only need 5 starters, whereas you need 22
Right.
in the NFL. So the thought process is different. You like to acquire as many picks as you can to build your roster.
Right. You would. I think there's a pretty good case to be made for maybe packaging 2 picks to move up in the first round if you see an elite prospect who deserves to be picked in an area where maybe that prospect has fallen. Instead of sitting there and trying to make 15, 16, and 19, or maybe even moving down with a pick to add if you feel like there's a good cluster in the second round. The last team to have 3 first-round picks was pretty recent. It was the Giants in 2019. They took Daniel Jones. I forget what was he, like 6th overall or something like that, 8th overall. He was definitely top 10.
Top 10, yeah, and he got Dave Gettleman got roasted for it. Yeah,
He did, right. So the other 2 were Dexter Lawrence at 17 and DeAndre Baker at 30. Now Lawrence is actually a pretty good lineman, so that's not a bad pick. DeAndre Baker had that crazy off-field thing in Miami, right? And then he, where he was yeah, and now he's playing for the Chiefs, and he's okay. He's not very good. I mean, really Daniel Jones's development under this new coaching staff will kind of weight this draft a little bit, but I mean, as you sit here right now, it didn't do anything all that good for the Giants to have 3 first-round picks.
Sixth overall was Daniel Jones. So,
right,
quarterback, you could justify because it's the most important position on a football team. You just have to be right. But the Eagles' history with this general manager would suggest that they'll at least trade one of them to get it up for. Because we actually have this question. Actually, we've gotten a lot in the last couple of months. Do we think they'll trade it? I think Ben Gold asked it today, so we'll address it now. My feeling is they'll trade one of them, just to get a future first or get future picks for the following season, because you always like to have more than your normal allotment, and plus we'll see if they get any compensatory picks. But I would expect that to happen, and there's no way to know that for sure until you get there. In fact, it could happen during the draft, which we've seen them do a lot of that over the years in terms of draft day trades. It's rare for them not to make one. So, yeah, I would expect them to move one and get something for the future.
The Raiders had 3 a couple of years ago. Cleveland Farrell was 4th overall. That did not work out. But Josh Jacobs and Jonathan Abram, 24 and 27, those 2 guys were pretty good contributors to a team that's right on the cusp. They didn't make the playoffs this year, but they were right there. Oh, wait, did they? No, the Raiders.
They did. They lost the Bengals.
Yeah, they were the 7th seed, right? Yeah. So they're there. I mean, those 2 guys certainly have helped contribute. I wouldn't call them 2 of their best players, but they're sort of, building block type players for them. So I mean, you could say that was mixed results. Obviously, missing on Farrell was not ideal for them. You look at the Browns from a few years ago when they had 3. They took Peppers. Well, here's the thing. They had the number 1 overall pick and took Myles Garrett. Okay, that's great. They took Garrett.
Home run.
But then they also took, Jabril Peppers and David Njoku. So Njoku, Peppers is not with him anymore, is they?
Right,
is
traded. No, he was traded in the Beckham trade. He was moved to the Beckham trade, I think, to the Giants. And then Njoku has been a disappointment, no doubt about it. And then it was 3 or 4 first-round picks. What was the one with my friend Anthony Becht and Chad Pennington? Was that 2000?
That was all the way back in 2000, right? And that was Sean Ellis, Jonathan Abraham.
Decent.
By the way,
great.
12 and 13, back-to-back, just like we talk about with the Eagles.
There you go.
Number 12, 13. Now, Abraham was a great pick. Abraham was fantastic pass rusher.
Home run, yeah.
Right. Yep. Pennington was 18 and Anthony Becht at 27. So, I mean, Abraham and Pennington were good. I mean, Pennington wasn't great. He was a playoff quarterback. He was good.
Yeah, Pennington, he had so many shoulder problems, so you can't blame them for that. Beck was overdrafted. He should have been like a third round pick. He can block. Wasn't a great athlete. I never really understood that one. Why are you taking a blocking tight end in the first round? I mean, he had a decent career, but you just don't take guys like that who don't have the versatility. Because, like, I remember, if you remember this one, when Belichick did get Kyle Brady, it, like, ruined his draft with the Browns. Kyle Brady from Penn State was supposed to be like the second coming of the next great tight end. He wasn't a great athlete. He can block.
Yep.
He's big, but he wasn't a great player. To this day, I'll never understand why Belichick thought he was like going to be this great player. I don't know what he saw, but he never became the player people thought he
Penn
would be.
State, but yeah, he clearly did not.
He wasn't a great athlete, though.
Right.
Yeah,
no, that's true. That is true. The other one we talked about was Spielman, right? He had 3 first-round picks with the Vikings. He took Xavier Rhodes. He took Sharif Floyd. And then they added that extra first-round pick by trading back in to get Cordarrelle Patterson. So you look at those 3 and you say, did that do much for them? Floyd got hurt. Patterson never really panned out for them. And Xavier Rhodes was a good starting corner for them. That was pretty good. So,
just to go back to the Raiders, Jonathan Abram has been a disappointment. He's been hurt a lot with shoulder problems. He had shoulder problems back at
Alabama.
Not
Alabama. He went to Mississippi State. Yeah.
Right. Mississippi State. And then Josh Jacobs went to Alabama. Good player, not great.
Right.
Okay, so based on this little study here, they're mixed results at best. Now, doesn't mean you can't get them all right, but history would show you it's hard to get them all right, and maybe you do. Maybe that's another factor in why they should trade out one of those picks. Not all of them. The Eagles need a lot of help. Let's call it. Look, they got the playoffs. It's a great achievement. There's no doubt about it. Sirianni's first year, you'd be hard pressed to find anyone who thought they'd make the playoffs, but they did. Great story.
Mm-hmm.
They're not being fooled. I know some fans they'd asked us, do we think that the Eagles would fool themselves in terms of, okay, everything's great, and we know we were in the playoffs, we'll be good again next year. I don't feel like they feel that way. I think they know they have a lot of work to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I do believe, again, that they'll wind up, when push comes to shove, trading one of them, trading back, which we saw them do when they got Goddard. They traded out the first round to the Ravens. Ravens took Lamar Jackson, and Goddard's been a pretty good draft pick.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the Ravens, because the other caveat to those teams that I was talking about with the multiple first-round picks is that, among those teams I mentioned were the Giants, the Jets, and the Cleveland Browns. So those have not been great model franchises over the last 10 years, and nor have they been known for really hitting in the draft. Now, take the Ravens, for an example. There have been a couple of times they've had multiple first-round picks, and one of those years they drafted Jonathan Ogden and Ray Lewis in the same freaking draft. Can you believe that?
Unbelievable.
I mean, how amazing is that? They drafted 2 Hall of Famers in one draft.
I think the Steelers did that. I'd have to go back. I've heard this before. It was like a trivia question. I think the Steelers did it in one draft. There have been a couple teams that had drafted multiple Hall of Famers in one draft. I don't have a list in front of me, but it's happened. You just want to get – I remember Bill Polian telling us that the best general managers get less than 50% of their first-round picks correct. Just hard to do. It is. You're trying to be objective about a subjective process. What do I mean by that? You're drafting guys 20, 21, 22 years old and try to project them to the next level. You don't know about their maturity. Like, you gather information, but you just don't know how they're going to handle themselves. The tape looks great, but you don't know about the mental part of it. How are they going to handle what's coming, all the money? Ryan Leaf has talked openly about his situation, who was a very gifted player in '98. And, Bill Polian got it right with Peyton Manning. He was squeaky clean, Peyton Manning, and obviously a great college player. But people love Leaf's upside, and they didn't know that he was such a F-up off the field. I mean, who knew? So it's hard. It's really hard. It's just really hard to get those all right. If you're an NFL GM, you're gonna get a first round pick wrong every once in a while. There's just nothing you can do. You can do all the research you want, but you don't know the guy personally, so you're not gonna get it all right all the time.
Yeah, no doubt about it. By the way, the Ravens last year had 2 first-round picks. They were very low, but they look pretty good so far in Rashad Bateman and Jason Owe, or Adafe, I believe now Owe. I mean, Owe had 5 sacks as a situational pass rusher. Bateman came in, he missed half the year with the injury, but he played well. So, I mean, that just goes to show you see a good team that has multiple first round picks, and they capitalize on that. So obviously the Eagles have a lot of different options there. I tend to agree with you. I don't think they're going to make 3 first round picks. I think they're going to move around. I think it's hard to say right now. It all depends on what happens, whether they go up, they go down, they go out. We have a lot to determine between now and then.
On that, what we were told on these things is that it's what the board tells you. So let's say they're at 19, right? And every player at 19 is gone. You're definitely going to look to trade out. Like if your board, if it goes okay, at 19, the next player on your board is a second round pick. You're looking to do everything you can to trade out. You don't want to make a pick there. Now, that's what happened to them and Marcus Smith. This is going back, 8 years? 14, right? 2014. They did not have a first round grade on them, but they tried to trade out and couldn't. You have to take somebody. And that's what happened. Again, this is 8 years ago, so I don't remember all of it, but I just remember that they did not have him. Wherever they took him, that's not where their grade was.
Right.
It might have been 40 overall. I don't remember, but I just know that they were stuck, and you don't want to get in that position. You want to be able to trade. You want to have your board set up so you know you're now. Remember, every player they want. Was that the Brandon Cooks draft?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, because that was the one where there was Cooks, it was Clinton Dix.
Yep.
And the other
Mosley.
Who was the other? Who was it?
CJ Mosley, Clinton Dix, Cooks, and
but it was
somebody else.
There were 3 players on the board. It was who they were going to take. It was Cooks. It was Clinton Dix, and there was another guy. Clinton Dix would have been a bad pick. He was a major disappointment.
Right.
Cook's a good player. I'm drawing a blank on third player, but
me too.
And they all went before they were going to go there, and then they got stuck. See that? It was just like, and they were going to trade up, and they decided not to. And again, this is 8 years ago, so I don't remember the exact scenario, but you trade to smooth this along here. You trade out when your board's been hit, where you go, and then now, obviously you've had this worked out before the draft, and what are called trade calls. Hey, if our guy's gone, let's have this worked out. So this is done in like a minute, because you don't wait till you're on the clock to make a trade discussion. You have this worked out a week or so in advance.
Right.
So that's what happens sometimes if your board gets destroyed.
Sure. Was it Zach Martin or CJ? No, Zach Martin went 16, Mosley 17, Calvin Pryor 18, Jawan James 19, Brandon Crooks 20, and then Clinton Dix 21. Kyle Fuller? They liked him, didn't they?
I don't remember, but it was one other player. I remember reporting it. I just don't remember the third player. And it who else? What was the?
Fuller went in that group cluster also. So, and I thought it might have been him. They were looking for corners at the time.
Okay.
He was good. Kyle Fuller. He's still good. I mean, he was good.
Who was 10? Okay. What pick number did they have then?
They had 22.
Okay, so who went from 15 to 21?
Shazier went 15 to Pittsburgh. That's a linebacker. That wouldn't have. Yeah. Then Zach Martin, the guard, went to Dallas. Then linebacker CJ Mosley to Baltimore. Then Calvin Pryor, corner or safety. He was like a safety to the Jets. Right. And then Jawan James, the offensive tackle, to the Dolphins. Then Brandon Cooks, the wide receiver, to New Orleans. And then Clinton Dix to Green Bay.
And then who? And then the Eagles took Marcus Smith?
Well, they traded down with the Browns. Remember, the Browns traded up to take Johnny Manziel there.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
The next few picks were D Ford, Darqueze Dennard, then Jason Verrett, and then the Eagles took Marcus Smith.
Okay, I can't remember.
Thought Fuller was high on their board. I remember.
Might have been.
I recorded on it, but I thought he was pretty high on their board.
Can't remember. Again, can't believe it's been 8 years. Wow. Marcus Smith.
It's a pretty good draft. Clowney 1. Greg Robinson did not work out at number 2. Bortles not at 3. Sammy Watkins overdrafted at 4. But then Khalil Mack 5. Jake Matthews 6. Mike Evans 7. Anthony Barr 9 to Minnesota. Ebron a little overdrafted, but he's had a good career. 10 to Detroit. Taylor Lewan 11 to Titans. Odell Beckham Jr. 12 to the Giants, and then Aaron freaking Donald 13th. To the Rams. Sure makes up for the Greg Robinson miss at number 2 overall.
God,
that
I
they
didn't
got
know.
Aaron Donald at 13th overall.
What happened was Greg Robinson was supposed to be this elite athlete, and he was that because that's what the tape showed. But he was not a great football player, and
I remember that.
he fizzled out pretty quickly. But man, it's it's funny. The Rams love Johnny Manziel. It was either going to be they obviously got Jeff Fisher got it right, and whoever's with him then. But Manziel, well, let's just talk about a guy who had so much hype,
Right.
and by the way, a lot of scouting people loved it because he was so competitive and it was a leader and all this, but they completely missed the football character. That's the problem with these first round picks. It's so hard to evaluate football character. You think you got all the information, and then some guys show you a side you weren't aware of, and then you got guys like Damon Arnett, who's got some severe issues, severe issues, and how in the hell he was a first round pick, and it wasn't to the extreme that it's come out now, but a lot of teams had him off their board because they knew that there were issues. But you got to know this stuff the best that you can if you're going to draft.
By the way, this draft we're talking about at least 3 Hall of Famers, right? I mean, Aaron Donald's a Hall of Famer.
Hell yeah.
Zach Martin's made 7 Pro Bowls. He's probably
really
going to make
good.
the Hall of Fame. He's really good. He's good. So Zach Martin, Aaron Donald, Khalil Mack's made 6 Pro Bowls. I mean, he's probably going to be a Hall of Famer.
And Evans, right?
And Mike Evans, amazingly, he's made 4 Pro Bowls, but he's had 1,000 yards every single year for 8 years. So he's gonna,
each year.
How about that?
Wow.
Each year,
wow.
At least 1,000. He's had 11, 12, 13, and 1,400 yard season. So
he's so good. He's so underrated, like because he's been on some bad teams, over in the past. Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what happens there now without Brady, where his career goes. Godwin. I know we're going to get. We have questions about Godwin. You remember, folks, he tore his ACL. And you don't know how he's going to come back, and the Bucs have to make a decision what they want to do with him, because their challenge is because they try to run it back and they changed the way they did contracts just to be able to run it back. So you have to wonder what are the Bucs going to do now with their contracts, and are they going to let Godwin walk because he's coming off a serious injury? That's fascinating.
Oh my God! I just found another Hall of Famer from this draft. Another likely Hall of Famer.
What round?
Stay the same. Round 2.
What team?
Wide receiver. If I give the team away, it's going to give everything away.
Wide receiver. 2014.
Wide receiver. Taken.
Of course. Devontae Adams.
Yes. Devontae Adams. Taking
he's
11 spots after Jordan Matthews.
He's just the epitome of route running, toughness, smarts, craftiness, competitiveness. And he shows once again you don't have to run in the 4.3s to be great.
Right.
So speed's overrated. Sure, you love to have it at receiver, but can you get open? Can you? I mean, his route running it's just sick. If you watch the all 22, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm agreeing with you.
Unreal. It's just unreal.
Allen Robinson also in that second round. He's not going to be in the Hall of
Fame.
He's a really good player.
Good player. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. How about that? Unbelievable, that draft. Okay. And Greg Robinson's the second pick. Unbelievable. That's the NFL draft for you. Well, that just goes to show what we're talking about is that, optionality is the best thing to have. Make sure you know what your board is. Make sure you know what the best talent out there is. Is there anybody you can think of as we end this on a defensive end or a corner? Maybe you picked up some intel while you've been out in LA that you think might be available on the market? Not yet.
Well, probably because we're doing the shows with Greg next week. I'm just going to start putting up. We'll start hitting free agency next week. Because there will be for this team, because they have a history of doing so. They always get involved in free agency now, less or so last year because of the Wentz contract, because they killed their cap. But they're going to have more cap space, so I would expect them to be more aggressive. I mean, we all knew they were up against it, but they're just good at finding these. The Roseman's really good at reading the market and finding these guys who are undervalued assets, and that's the key to it. And that's how you can build it. Now, I'll be interested to see if they could finally. Well, this last draft looks on paper to be pretty good, right? A pretty good bounce back draft after what happened in 19 and 20.
Sure.
If they can build on that good draft of last year, this thing could be a legitimate 10-win team every year because you've got dominant in depth on the offensive line. We just mentioned earlier here about the defensive line. They have to replenish it. I'm sure they know this. They'll do that. Now, obviously, the quarterback position is another issue. Funny. It's rare for us not to talk about Hurts in the future of the quarterback position, but we managed somehow not to do it until now. But it's that quarterback position is on its own island.
Yep.
But there's an opportunity here to really build it in this draft and in particular in free agency, which is up first.
All right, let's talk about our friends Hoop Fans. The latest offer from DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. It's just too good to pass up. I'm talking between the legs 360 windmill good, right? That sounds like some Dr. J right there. New customers can bet just $1 on any team and get $150 in free bets if they win. It's that simple. DraftKings Sportsbook customers can also bet on the NBA with same game parlays. Combine multiple bets from the same game for a bigger payout. The more legs you add, the more money you can win. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. Best of all, you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. In fact, Adam, I might have to. I haven't bet NBA in a very long. I haven't been betting it a lot, but I did a little on the Super Bowl, and I may have to create a nice little same game parlay for James Harden's debut as a Sixer. Kind of take over on pretty much everything: points, assists, boards. We're gonna go crazy with James Harden when he makes his Sixers debut there. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code ITB. Bet just $1 on any NBA team and get $150 in free bets if they win. That's promo code ITB at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 or older. Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit restrictions apply in partnership with Meadows Racetrack and Casino. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, let's also remember to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com, enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams for the fan, by the fan. That's their motto. So make sure you're checking them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation. We'll pause real quick for another word from our great sponsors, including our friends at Sky Motor Cars. All right, and if you check out our friends at Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You'll get a great deal.
On that, real quick
ahead.
On that. So if you go to a dealership, you will not believe the fact in my lifetime and in your lifetime, this is the first time I've ever seen this. Dealers are getting over MSRP because of this chip issue, because of COVID. You know, it's going to be at least another year until the car you could bargain on new cars, and that's why you should, through Sky Motors, you could sell your car and get way more than you normally would. Okay, if you're selling your car, and they have a decent selection, but there's a car shortage in this country with certain dealerships, like the manufacturers, because of the chip issue. And I've never seen anything like it. I'm thinking about buying a new car maybe next year. Well, I was thinking about it. I'm not doing it. If I was going to do anything, I'd get a pre-owned or used because there's a little bit more leverage and bargaining. But man, go to a new dealership. It's just ridiculous. I was shaking my head. So I started reading up on it because there's one particular car that I want to get. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not paying $5,000 over MSRP. It's ridiculous. I'm usually paying $10,000 under MSRP. For hell with that.
Right.
You know?
No, that's a great strategy on your end there.
Yeah.
All right, good stuff. Good stuff. And again, our friends are Sky Motor Cars. Really happy to have them alongside with Inside the Birds. We have a couple of Ask ITB questions before we get out of here. So why don't you read the first one?
All right, this is a good thing from Jason Keller. This is from our message board. And Jason, we're definitely going to this actually, your question kind of is how we set up our stuff with Greg Cosell, because he asked about what are the strongest position groups for this year's free agency class, and where do you think Philly will look to invest in free agency versus draft? So basically, on our research, receivers by far the best position for free agency. I mean, you got all sorts of sizes and speeds and ages, but as always, there's a reason why some of these guys have become free agents. I like Allen Robinson. The problem is here's where you have to get the proper information. I know the Bears, they like Allen Robinson personally, great guy, high character. But I know talking to them, they wondered why it took him a little bit longer to come back from his hamstring injury. He missed a lot of time. He's a guy who would always come back quickly from injury or play through it.
Mm-hmm.
So I know there were some questions internally. Why did it take him so long? But, he's an older player now. I think he's around 30. Super high character. We'll get into him, when we talk about free agents with Cosell. But he's a guy that would make sense for that veteran guy they should have had last year. Juju Smith-Schuster's out there, DJ Chark, Mike Williams, Cedric Wilson, who I like a lot, Byron Pringle, who could also return, Valdez Scaling of the Packers, Traquan Smith, James Washington. I mean, this is like super deep. You can make a legitimate case of there's like 15 decent players.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't even say Devontae Adams, right? I mean, he's probably
right,
not going to
exactly
go anywhere.
Right,
but yeah.
Right. He's one of the guys we won't talk about much because we think he's going to stay. But no, some of these guys are clean. Like Juju Smith-Schuster's just a good player. He was hurt last season, came back really, as he said, he wasn't supposed to come back, but he did anyway, and he tried to help. He's more of a slot receiver, but if they want to now, they'll have competition if they get involved with any of these players. So they're going to have competition for all of them. And my guy DJ Chark, but he's had a big injury history, and we had reported a couple years ago, and I still think this is the case.
Mm-hmm.
They really want to stop signing these injured guys. They've done for the most part, they've done a good job of doing that. Other than that stupid restructure on Jeffrey, to this day, I'll never understand why they did it last one.
Mm-hmm.
It's ridiculous. But they've this has been their MO, is to go away from these injured players. But you could get some bargains on a 1 year. You could do a 4-year contract, but with a 1 or 2 year structure, so you can get out of it if the guy gets hurt again or doesn't produce.
Right.
But to answer your question, it's definitely receiver. That's the strongest one, and I do believe the second part of your question. I do believe they'll sign at least one. Yes.
There you go. I would add pass rusher because there's a whole bunch of guys who I think will wind up hitting the market. Starting with Von Miller. I think he's already said he would like to at least test the market. So Chandler Jones, I believe, is supposed to be a free agent as well.
Yeah.
Akeem Hicks, a really good defensive end for the Bears. Now, a lot of these guys are north of 30, so that might be an advantage for the Eagles in that maybe they're looking for 1 or 2 year deals. They're not going to get huge, long-term money. So you can kind of maybe get a big name there at a short-term price. Not Von Miller, of course, but one guy I think that is an interesting name is Emmanuel Ogbah from Miami. He had like 9 sacks last year and the year before, I believe. So he's available. He's 28 years old. Anthony Barr is actually, I believe, are unrestricted free agent along with Hassan Reddick. So some of these guys are pass rushers, like outside linebacker or just edge or more D end. Hicks is an interior rusher, but I mean, that's 5 or 6 names right there that are pretty good.
Hicks won't be on their list. He's near the end of his career. He's been beat up physically. He's just so many injuries. Good player then. That was a great acquisition that Ryan Pace made. That he was a guy who helped him get to the playoffs, but he's on the back nine. I'd be shocked if the Eagles are involved. I don't. He may have 1 year left in him physically, but a good player.
I wasn't really just talking from an Eagle. I was just meant from an some team is going to give him a 1 year deal.
Yeah,
he'll be a good rotational piece. Yeah,
that's exactly what you nailed it. That's the kind of guy you bring in on a 1 year prove it deal. Now prove it. I mean, he's near that of his career, but you don't invest him at all. Linebacker's pretty deep. In fact, we're going to talk about some of the guys with Greg, who I think are players that could interest him. Jayon Brown is a decent inside linebacker.
Yeah.
Anthony Walker. Jared Davis, who I love, who just has not been used correctly. I remember the Lions told me that what surprised him is how good of a pass rusher he was as a middle linebacker. And I think he had 7 sacks 1 year for them. He's an interesting player. I mean, you can get some bargains at linebacker, but receiver is really rich. Really rich.
Yeah. Receiver is the number one as far as talent latent position, I would think right now on. All right. What's the next question?
All right. This is a fun question. We would have to do research on this because it's somewhat subjective because you'd have to take so much data in and have to just come up with a number, where you put them. But from Sandro, he wants to know, is your opinion Howie Roseman a top 5 GM? My opinion would be no, because he's not nailed. He's not consistent enough in the draft. If he was at least above 500 in the draft, be that he's won a Super Bowl, is really good at free agency, and does good contracts. Doesn't always get it right for contracts, but does a good job. He would be a top 5 GM, but he's not because of his draft misses. He just has to do better. and he's got to continue to listen to Andy Weidel and the personnel staff and go by their board that's set, and listen to his man Tom Donahoe, who is his consigliere, sort of his advisor.
Yeah.
Except for Milton Williams. But overall, if he does that, this thing's gonna move forward. I said this about 20 minutes ago. They're gonna move this thing forward here very quickly if they continue to get the draft right, because they seem to do everything else right, but the draft is just, for whatever reason, when they don't go by what's there, and when certain people get more involved than they should get involved, it doesn't always go well. So they've got to stick by what the board says, by Weidel and his group, and go from there.
Right. I'm trying to think who I consider the top GMs in that. To me, Kevin Colbert's the best GM in football. Now I know he's about to retire, but I'm still going to count him. He's the best GM in football. I'm not really sure it's that close. Eric DeCosta's only been doing it for a couple of years because really it was Ozzie Newsome was the Ravens general manager for a long time. But Eric's been Ozzie's right-hand man forever, and they've seemingly done a pretty good job. I know they didn't make the playoffs this year, but they had more injuries than you could believe. So I would put Eric probably in that conversation. I think the guy from the Titans, John Robinson, has done a really good job. Yeah. I think Brett Veach probably. I mean, you can ding him for having Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, but he found Patrick Mahomes. That was
Brett's deal. Yeah, he. I would say Brandon Beane of the Bills.
Brandon Beane definitely. Yeah,
does a great job. He'd be up there.
Mm-hmm.
Your guy Kevin Colbert, I totally agree with that. Brett Veach for sure.
Yeah.
John Schneider, the Seahawks.
I had a higher opinion of Schneider. Like maybe the last 2 or 3 years have been a little tough for them, but they did make the playoffs 2 years ago, obviously. So it's just one bad year. I do like John Schneider a lot. He's had some pretty bad misses lately and has not been able to rebuild that offensive line. So I would ding him a little bit for that, but in general, he is a really good. He has had some unbelievable finds throughout his career.
Yep.
People forget that they won that Super Bowl. I mean, Doug Baldwin was a undrafted free agent.
Yep.
They were able to,
Sherman,
draft.
fifth rounder. Yeah. The only. I'm sorry.
As their linebacker from Utah, Bobby Wagner, was like a third or a fourth rounder or something like that. Yeah.
Was he? What? Let me see. Bobby Wagner was a second rounder.
Oh, was he? I thought he was a lower rounder. Maybe it was Chancellor who wound up being a low round pick. But
third. Yeah, he was definitely later. But no, the only problem. See, here's the problem with putting together these lists. If you want to be fair, you have to know what's control. Technically, Pete Carroll's control. My understanding is Rashad Penny was his pick. I know for a fact he wanted him badly. He just wants to run the ball. And Penny's been nothing but hurt. But when he's been healthy, like this past season, my gosh, the close of the season was incredible.
Right.
So Schneider would be up there, though. Again, you would have to know who made each pick. I'll say this: Roseman's definitely top 10. Is he top 5? I don't know about that. Yeah. But if he could just get the drafts mostly right, fans should come out every draft a year from there and say, okay, you can look at the draft. You know what? He did a good job. If you could say that like 3 years in a row, this guy's top 5 for sure. But he hasn't done that.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think it's fair. I think he's somewhere in that 5 to 10 range. Sometimes some of the things he does, I feel like get overrated, and some of the things that he does don't get enough credit. Like for example, the contracts thing or the getting under the cap. I always say every GM has to get under the cap. There's no you're allowed to be over the cap. So when I hear, it's Howie season, he's going to get us under the cap, I go, yeah, him and 31 other GMs are going to get their teams under the cap. They have to. There's no other choice. So, but he does do well with contracts. Obviously the draft's been inconsistent. He's had some issues throughout his tenure dealing with people in his own front office. And I think some of the things we've reported that have gone on in 2019 and 2020, while they may have been corrected, that they stand out to me as things that make me wince. So from a team collaboration standpoint, and as you say, you have to take context, and the owner is part of that as well.
Yep.
But I mean, that's stuff that shouldn't happen. So that's where I keep him out of the top 5, but put him in the 6 to 10 area. I think that's fair. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's always like, how can you put this guy? He hasn't even won a Super Bowl. Like I may say, Robinson from the Titans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't give me the whole who has this many Super Bowls. Jerry Reese has 2. He's been fired for like 6 years already with the Giants. All right. It's not all about just because a guy won a Super Bowl. It's about the process, the ability to sustain, your ability to constantly put out a roster that each year, gets better, or, you figured out the good mix of free. There's so much to being a GM. It's not just the draft, not just free agency, not just contracts. It's everything, as you mentioned. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Just one more thing. The argument I can't stand is when people will go, well, if the guy didn't win a Super Bowl, the guy's not a great GM. It's kind of like the Dan Marino argument, right? Dan Marino never won a Super Bowl. Are you going to argue really that he should be in the Hall of Fame?
Right.
He's a great quarterback. He didn't control the defenses around him, right, and the lack of a running game. This is when, in the 80s, you were supposed to run the football. It's changed now. Mm-hmm. But the guy's an elite passer, elite quarterback. Right. I just think it's like, okay, well, Trent Dilfer won an quarterback. Won a Super Bowl as a quarterback because they hit him. They wouldn't let him throw the football. They just ran it and played great defense. It's the Mark Sanchez argument.
Yeah.
And that's another question which we got. Let's hold that for the next show. Mm-hmm. Do you need a lead quarterback to win a Super Bowl? I love this question. That could take like 2 hours. We should get the next if whether we get Rick Spielman back or not. I'd love to ask him about that someday. Even if he goes back to the Jaguars or somewhere else. Once he leaves, if we're still doing our show, we'll have him on. But whether it's Banner or another front office guy, because this is a great argument. I got to tell you, I used to say you had to have one. I'm not so sure. It doesn't mean you have to have an average quarterback, but it's a great discussion. It deserves further development and more research, but I definitely would like to talk about that.
And by the way, we forgot one of our GMs we forgot to mention. He just won the Super Bowl, is Lester Snead, who's been a good GM. I don't think you can. Yeah. You can. Sure. Now he's had some. Again, we talked about the 2014 draft. He drafted Greg Robinson number 2 overall. He drafted Tavon Austin in the top 10, if I'm not mistaken.
By the way, Jeff Fisher had control.
Jeff definitely. But there's your point of who has control, right? Jeff Fisher had control. Yes. Did he have control? I know Fisher had control in 2013. Did he have it in 14?
Well, they had a falling out in when did Fisher get fired? After the 16 season? I forget now. Yeah, he was with Goff first year. Yes. Yeah. So okay, let's finish with this. So here's what the Rams did in terms of trading away future sevens. In 2017, they traded up to get Goff to get the first pick. So that's to get a quarterback. So, but the next year is when they started doing for players. They traded because McVay had a man crush on Brandon Cooks. He admitted it. It wasn't a secret. He wanted Brandon Cooks in the worst way. It didn't quite work out that great. They got him from New England, and he helped him. I think he helped him get to the Super Bowl. But he's a good player. He still put up numbers, but he wasn't the player they quite thought they were getting. Then they traded out to get second, third round picks in 19. Now comes the big one, the trade for Jalen Ramsey. Now, in your opinion, do you think that the Ramsey draft giving up 2 firsts has worked out? I would say yes.
Yeah, I would say so. Absolutely. Yeah. Did he have a couple of bad snaps against Chase? Yeah, but are they where they at because of him? Sure, no doubt about it.
T. Higgins pushed off. He grabbed his face mask. How the hell did they miss that? It's embarrassing.
By the way, I'm looking at that 2017 draft. They didn't have the first rounder, right? Because they got Goff in 2016, but second round pick was Gerald Everett. He's been that's a good second round pick for him. He's been good for them.
Okay. He's okay. No, he's with Seattle now. Yeah.
That's right. But he was pretty decent for them for a couple, right?
Hurt a lot. No, actually, he was disappointment. He got hurt a bunch.
Oh, you know what? I'm confusing him with Higbee. I'm sorry.
Higbee's a stud. In fact, he should get the ball more. Unfortunately, he was hurt. Yeah.
But that draft, third round, Cooper Kupp and John Johnson. John Johnson's a good safety.
Got paid big by the Browns. Yeah. They couldn't keep him. No, that's Kupp's going to be a Hall of Famer at this pace. And you cannot argue. I love this trade when it happened, giving up 2 future firsts for Matthew Stafford. I always felt that he was with bad teams, just not enough talent around him. He's an elite quarterback. Now, is he going to make you pissed off if you're a Rams fan every once in a while? Because you go, why were you making that throw, dude? What were you seeing? Yeah. But their next first round pick is not until 2024.
Yeah, I don't know why it's so important, by the way, to have, as we end this, have the Matthew Stafford, is he in the Hall of Fame discussion? I know he's 33, so he's not young, but he's got years left. And just because he won a Super Bowl, I looked at his career stats. I've watched him play. I feel like he's a really good quarterback, but if his career ended today, I wouldn't put him in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, no way.
No.
He didn't do enough. He didn't do enough in Detroit to even get. Yeah, now it's not just getting another Super Bowl. He's got one now. He's just got to play well, stay healthy. Now, he's been pretty durable despite some tough injuries over the years. But it's the quarterback stuff is water cooler, beer, questions. It's such a great argument. I definitely want to have more of them.
It's like I always say that's like the Hall of Very Good. Matthew Stafford.
I thought
Hall of Very Good.
Sure, the Andre Reed argument. I know some friends of mine don't think he should have gotten in. It's if you look at his numbers, are pretty good.
Yep.
But and then you always have to argue the era that the guy was in.
Right.
It's a Harold Carmichael argument. If you look at his numbers back when he played, John Stallworth, another guy, the Steelers, even Stallworth, even for left, he got in the Hall of Fame. His numbers were not great at all. But Harold's numbers, second game streak, if you look at the numbers for when he played, he should have been in the Hall of Fame much earlier. Right. Just relative to when he played.
Right. I'm with you. All right, that is going to be it for this edition of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. A big thanks, as always, to our producer, Hunter Brody. Check out his work on YouTube. It's called Sports Talk with Broads, and his website is called broadsmedia.com. He's on Twitter at Broads81. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the birds.